Before I start, I would like to give a huge thank you to the Living Dinosaur for the recent shout-out. My inbox has been full and my subscriber count has jumped up by several hundred. I'm humbled that so many think I have something worthwhile to say. Thank you to all my new subscribers and everyone else who has stuck around. A lot of my videos are aimed at creationists, specifically those who deny the mountains of evidence which all point to the conclusion that the world is nearly 14 billion years old and that evolution happens. This one is a little more general and also addresses the less literal believers. As far as I'm aware, most humans for most of history have assumed that magic is real, that we have souls, an afterlife, and that there is at least one God. The idea that any of this might not be true wasn't even on their radar. Of course it's true. It's common knowledge. The idea that most people hold false beliefs would have seemed absurd, but rather than try to figure out how much, if any of it was true, it was easier to look for reasons to believe that it is true. I think the same thing applies today. The difference is that skeptics like me are relatively safe to express our views without fear of being burnt at the stake for simply being honest and open about what we do and don't believe. Religion tells people what they must believe and threatens them with never-ending torture if they don't, as if reaching a particular conclusion was a matter of choice, as if that was an appropriate penalty. Think about it, Christians and Muslims. Whoever wrote the holy books and those who've been telling you it's all true for so long don't want you to express doubt or get a second opinion, do they? To an impartial observer, it looks a lot like the religious people are encouraged to profess belief, regardless of whether or not they actually believe any of it. To openly express doubt is frowned upon, and for many it's easier to be meek and obedient. It seems like the religious institutions cause more of the young and naive to actually believe it, by surrounding them with other people who all say that they believe it. Some might say that this is all carefully calculated, and maybe in some cases it is. But I think there are an awful lot of true believers who put a lot of time and effort into convincing others that it's all real. I also think that there are a number of unscrupulous non-believers who see this as a relatively easy way to make a living, by professing to believe it themselves and then trying to persuade others, and sell a few books and DVDs while they're at it. I don't know which of the people here are being honest and which are not, but I'm speculating in a way which I wish more of the believers would do. It has been my experience that most of the outspoken believers have a poor understanding of what atheism is, and more to the point, what it's not. They tend to assume far too much. It can be summed up in a single sentence. Atheists are people who have not been convinced by the God hypothesis. I wish all creationists would write that on a card and keep it with them at all times. The way unbelievers like me have to keep describing what it means to be an atheist is tedious, but we're forced to, because so many of our theistic opponents keep strawmanning us. We don't all hate God. Some hate the concept, but we cannot actually hate something we don't believe exists. We don't all deny his existence because we want to get away with the sinful lifestyle we apparently enjoy so much. And one of the stupidest arguments is that there is some kind of battle between evolutionism and God. All I have to do to deflate that argument is to politely ask the creationist to Google Francis Collins or Kenneth Miller. Now, having said all that, I would like to run a little thought experiment designed to help religious people understand what being an atheist is like. I would like religious believers to consider the question, if there is no God, how would the world be different? This isn't a trick question, but it may shed some light on how much the person asked understands about the natural world. A true believer must conclude that the universe is here because their God created it. Not any old God, but their one. Having spoken with many believers, I know this will be a hard question for them, because it challenges their core assumption that everything we see has a supernatural cause. The thing I would like to know is whether they can even imagine a scenario in which there's no such thing as the supernatural, specifically the creator which they assume is the cause of everything. Can they even imagine a world in which everything we see is the result of purely natural processes, natural causes, the laws of physics, in other words? If they can, how would that imaginary world be different from this one? In anticipation of the question being batted back to me, I would say that if God was real, I'd expect to see some kind of miraculous intervention in modern times, especially in the time since video cameras have been invented. If God was real, I would expect to find more evidence to support him than an old collection of books and letters of which not even the believers can agree about its true meaning and authorship. If God was real, I would expect him to be able to communicate his message to every human being on this planet clearly and unambiguously in a way which didn't require Hebrew scholars, priests, popes, imams, rabbis and televangelists to act as middlemen. If God was real, I wouldn't expect to find thousands of conflicting religions. I would expect there to be only one. Here comes my question again. I would really like theists to consider the implications and to help us non-believers to understand how we're apparently so wrong. If there is no God, how would the world be different?